All right, everybody, I'm going to get started. We're a little bit late, had some technical difficulties, and Rosedale went overtime like normal. So we're going to get going. My name is Pat Schlapper. I grew up just down the road from here in Spooner, Wisconsin. Grew up fishing every kind of fish, but then fell in love with bass fishing in middle school, and now I get to do that on the Elite Series. So today I want to talk about a topic that anyone in this area is familiar with, and that's post-spawn smallmouth. And I kind of broke it up. I'm going to concentrate on natural glacial lakes. To me, there's a few different types of bodies of water around here, and there's some variance between what the fish do. And this amount of time, I don't really have a whole lot of time to talk about your flowage style systems. Like we have a lot right here. The tannic water, generally shallower, a lot of rock and a lot of wood. We're going to talk about natural glacial lakes. So the clear lakes, deeper water, clearer water, rock is your primary cover. That's what I'm going to concentrate on today. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and ask throughout the presentation. I'm going to start by just talking about the general types of structures I look for, and then the second half will be about the actual techniques and baits. So post-spawn period is going to vary a lot throughout the state. I would say generally it's going to be like early June through July. And once again, it's going to vary depending on how far north you are, how deep the lakes are, how clear the water is. Every lake is a little bit different. And the reason I want to talk about this topic is I personally think it's the hardest time of year to catch smallmouth. They get really spread out. They just get tough to catch. So that's why I wanted to maybe share a little bit of the insight of things that I've learned from 30 years of fishing for them. The transition. So going from spawn to post-spawn. This is, I think, a really important takeaway from this presentation is it takes a long time. I think smallmouth spawn a lot longer than what people generally think. People think they come up, they spawn, they leave, they're done. They think if they found one on a bed, 3 days ago and they came back and it's gone, they think the spawn is over. That's not how it works. It's very drawn out depending upon, once again, the lake that you're on. And then the other thing I think a lot of people overlook, they think that fish spawn and they just go deep right away. They hang around a lot longer than what you think. Not all of them, but a good amount of fish will stay shallow for a long time. Not only just recovering, but I think some of them are garden fry, just kind of hanging out where they spawn. They will spread out. Early spawners, those fish that you found right away that were on a bed and they disappeared, those fish might be out deep. Late spawners, they might still be spawning the end of June, and they certainly will stay shallow the end of June, and they'll be everywhere in between. So I think it's really important that you kind of cover all areas of the water column. Where do fish spawn? This is the first thing that I want to figure out when I go to a lake. A lot of the lakes I fished before, so I know where they spawn, so I can kind of skip a step. But if I go to a new lake that I've never fished and I'm fishing for smallmouth this time of year, I want to know where they spawn. They might not necessarily be spawning at that point, but I want to know where they spawn. What do I look for? My biggest thing is flats. I love fishing flats, not only for smallmouth, but for largemouth. Long tapering points, humps or high spots, and just different types of bottom composition. So why I like flats is, first off, when you get into big areas, I think a lot of people get deterred from fishing them because it's such a vast area and the fish won't be everywhere. So I personally like flats because I like to break them down, find the little sweet spots that a lot of people overlook. And I think it's just easy for fish to transition on flats. It's easy for them to spawn on the top of the flat that's maybe 5 feet, and then they can just kind of slide out to 7, 8 feet, and then they can eventually get on the break line, and then they can eventually slide out into the basin or onto a hump. So that's why I like humps. I think they kind of offer everything that you need. So this is kind of what I just talked about. This is just an example of a big, I don't even know what lake that is, honestly. I just saw it and I looked at it. I'm like, if I was going to this lake fishing for smallmouth, that is where I would start, is on a flat like that. And this actually shows two different types of flats. This one offshore, and then this one that's offshore, but it's really close to the bank and it has a saddle. That's primo. So, there's that guy.
Yeah.
That one was not, I did not catch smallmouth in that tournament.
He did not, but you know, he's a little bashful right now because he had this sitting in back instead of out here in front of him. Well done.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I wasn't fishing smallmouth, but it's still a good one. Okay, we kind of talked about this already. Once again, when I go to a lake, there'll be all kinds of different size flats. I always want to start on the biggest flat because I think that is the highest percentage of chance where a larger number of fish will spawn there. Once again, not that they're going to necessarily be spawning when you go there, but I want to get on top of that flat, especially if it's a calm day, and I just want to throw them more around. And I want to find pods of beds. I want to find bigger rock. I want to find sand. I want to see fish cruising around. A lot of times there'll be little groups of them cruising around full spawn. And it'll just give me an idea of what's going on. I'll see, okay, 90% of the beds are empty, like they're pretty much done. Or there's a lot of fish roaming, they must have just got done. Or most of the fish are real close to the break line, so they're quite a ways past the spawn. They're working their way out. So that's why I like to go to the biggest flat, is I feel like I can decipher the most information off of an area like that. And once I get information from that big flat, then I can start to transfer it over to some of these other areas that I'm going to talk about. This is kind of a little, one of my tournament partners is here right now, and I had a really secret micro flat that we've caught a ton of fish on a lake north of here. And I didn't put it on here because I knew some people would probably be here that would recognize it. But I call them micro flats or mini flats. So those are the places that, I don't know how I should say this. In a tournament scenario, which I don't know how many people are tournament fishermen in here, but in a tournament scenario, I like to find the micro flats. So a micro flat is just basically, that's what it is, a small little flat where there might not be a huge population of fish there, but they don't get as much pressure. And I feel like generally they're a little bigger fish. So that's just a little tidbit of, once I go and I look at the bigger flats, I'm going to go look for the little secret micro flats. And this is a perfect example. Once again, I don't even know what lake that was on. I just seen it, you know, how the water cuts in close to it. Just a perfect little flat right here, where if the bottom composition is correct, I mean, I have no idea what, there could be all matted up grass for all I know, but if the bottom composition is correct and there's a population of fish in that area, there might be a handful of better quality fish there. So that's one little kind of nugget that I feel like I always had a little bit of an edge over a lot of people, because most people in a tournament scenario would only concentrate on the big flats, which is where a lot of the population of fish is, but they also might get the most pressure. You might show up on a tournament day and there's 6 people on the flat you want to fish. Then I can just go rotate my little secret spots, the little micro flats. Long tapering points. Basically a long tapering point, I mean, that's pretty much a flat, but a lot of times, I mean, I'll pull up this one. I know people in here will know which one this is. This is on a lake north of here that there's probably been more money won on that spot on that lake than probably anywhere else. And this actually has a lot more going on than this long tapering point, because we have some big flats right next to it. So long tapering points post spawn. Thinking about this point in particular, I know a lot of fish spawn there. a lot of fish spawn there. And a lot of the fish that spawn there spawn on the upper end of it. But what happens when they're done spawning is they will just work their way on out. They'll just work their way out to the tip of it and eventually get out here. So once again, similar to a flat, I feel like a long tapering point gives them everything that they want to transition from fully spawning to fully post-spawn out into their summer pattern, because eventually they'll end up on the break line and on the very, very end of it out in deeper water. So that's why I like long tapering points, basically a glorified flat, just a different version of it. So that's probably my the number 2 thing that I look at. Humps and high spots. Now this, I think, is where I think generally a lot of the people, I said this earlier, like they think they spawn and then they just like, I got to go out and fish a 30-foot hump. There will be fish out there, but not all humps are created equal, in my opinion. So in this period, I want to find the humps and high spots that are close to somewhere that they spawn. That's usually where they're going to go the quickest. This, once again, is on that same lake. Another spot. I know a ton of fish spawn right here. A ton of fish spawn on this flat. And then easy for them to swim on out to this hump, these two here. There's another one on the other side. That's usually some of the first places that they get to, because when a fish is post spawn and they're truly recovering, they don't want to. I feel like they don't want to go swim a long ways away. They want to get onto the next piece of structure that they want to be on, and they want it to be close to where they spawn until they're fully recovered, and then they'll go out and get out on the super deep stuff, or maybe go roam on bait, do whatever they're going to do.
So what do you see from the cover?
It varies. That's why this time period is so hard, because there's fish literally doing everything. Like you might catch one up on the top of the flat that's 19 inches long and weighs 3 pounds that just got done spawning. But then you might catch one out on one of these humps that's a 19-incher that weighs 4.5 pounds. That's all fat. That may have spawned 3 weeks before the other one. So it's really hard to say. That's why this time frame is so tricky, because you go to a tournament and you see some guy sitting out on a 30-foot hump all day, and they come in with a good bag, and then you got the next guy who's fishing 4 feet of water, which is usually me, and I'll come in with a good bag. It's not like other times of the year where I know that I need to be out in 30 foot of water around bait. It's just not like that. Not that there won't be fish on bait, but them fish are just so spread out. And so I can't say like it takes 3 weeks for a smallmouth to fully recover from spawn. I can't say that. I'm not smart enough for that. I just know that they're doing a lot of different things at this time. Like if you ask me, if it was pre-spawn, it'd be a kind of a whole different deal I was talking about up here. So I don't know how to answer that. But yeah, this was just an example of once again, I very personally know this area really, really, really well. And I know the progression that those fish make on this particular spot. So it's really easy for me to confidently say, up on the flat, transition to the saddle, end up on the humps. That's like a picture perfect example of the type of humps that I look for this time of year. I'm not looking much past 20 foot of water this time of year in most cases. I generally concentrate shallower right now. So that's just an example. Key bottom characteristics. This is kind of, a lot of people probably know this, but I just want to touch on it. Rock, gravel, sand, combinations and mixes of those different types of bottom composition is a big, big deal. And that's kind of what this next section is going to be about, because that's one thing. If you go to a lake you don't know, you might go to the first 3 flats and it's all mud, or it's all just tons of bad grass, and like there's just not places they're going to spawn. So that's kind of part of the learning phase, but I'm looking for this type of bottom when I get on those flats. Rock, sand, gravel, combinations of all that. rock and sand mix is probably the most overlooked of these bottom composition. I think people, and I was the same way for a long time, honestly, until I went and fished Sturgeon Bay. I was like, I got to find rock. Rock, they're on the rock. And you go to Sturgeon Bay, and you fish Sturgeon Bay, and it's a big rock flat. And then you find a patch of sand that's half the size of this room, and there's like 100 smallmouth sitting on it. So same thing happens around here. Maybe not to that, I know not to that extent. And it might be a patch of sand that's a 10-foot patch of sand amongst rock. That's where a lot of those fish will be. And if you think about it from like a feeding standpoint, would a fish rather go rut around in rocks to try to eat, or would they rather wait for a crawdad to come scooting across the sand patch? Then they just swim up and eat. So, like I said, where my eyes were first open to that was on Sturgeon Bay years ago. First time I ever fished there, we were just looking for rock flats, and we would throw our air jigs and our swim baits, and we would catch a few. And then we came across this patch of, it was like anybody who's fished there, it looks like a turquoise circle. And you're just like, oh, and then you look down, like, there's a whole bunch of fish down there. Because a lot of times it's a little bit deeper, and then they're all smallmouth. It's just insane. So that was the eye opener for me. So rock sand mix is a big, big deal this time of year. Really any time of the year, but post spawn and spawn especially. Isolated rock patches, boulders around sand. Key takeaway: sand is more important than a lot of people think. They just don't think about that. They think about rock and gravel, but sand is a big deal. This is just an example of a 360 shot. I thought this isn't my image. I just saw it and like, this is really good. I think it was in like 9 foot of water. The depth's not showing up. In other pictures that he had, I think it was in 9 foot of water. So this is a prime example. This is like, this is just full on rock. Starts to transition into broken up rock. Now we got sand, and now we got some boulder patches. The first cast I would make would be right here, right between there. That is the prime spot for me. And then obviously there's stuff out around it too. But I just thought that was a really good image to show what I'm talking about. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. There could be just a little patch of sand right in the middle of that rock, and that we're holding. And that's the other thing I think a lot of people, they think they got to find this big magic spot like this. They see all these big rock bars and like that's where they're all at. It's a lot of times, the little intricacies, the transitions, that's where the fish are. It's a big rock bar, there's a lot of fish on it, but there's certain little sweet spots where those fish are going to be. So I just thought that was a good image. This is another image on side imaging, a little bit more extreme. A little bit heavier rock up here, mostly sand, a couple big isolated boulders. I mean, that's like day one smallmouth stuff, but that's a prime picture of what you want to find. So any questions on that stuff so far? I'm going kind of fast and we're on a little low on time. Vegetation, once again, I think a lot of people overlook this for smallmouth. Like largemouth, everybody, I got to go find the grass. But smallmouth, a lot of people don't talk about it or think about it. It's all about rock and gravel and sand. So for me, I really like to fish cabbage this time of year. I feel like, and I like smaller isolated patches if I can find, like I've got a few in my mind, like lakes that I'm thinking about. And most time when I catch a smallmouth in it, it's a little smaller patches. It'll be close to the flats. It'll be close to kind of the areas where I've been talking about. But I think they just like to go there to recover. And I personally think that they take their fry there to recover. Not all of them, and I can't give you like concrete facts on that. I've just always thought that they'll take them into a patch of cabbage and they can just protect them better versus out on a rock bar where it's harder to protect them from predators. So that's why I really like cabbage. And also it's overlooked. People just don't fish that much. So cabbage, good. Green, big leaf, stocky, that's prime. And especially if it's like a little spaced out, like if you can get it where the cabbage, like the clumps are like 2-3 feet apart and there's room for them to roam like that, that gets me going. That's a good spot. Now we'll kind of get into tactics. very broad. Once again, like it's hard. I couldn't go out this time of year and have like 2 rods out. I wouldn't feel like I was doing a good job. Like I'd have to have a lot of stuff. So what I got listed there is kind of my main arsenal. Obviously there'd be some other stuff mixed in too, but my first choice early, especially if it's earlier in the morning and it's calm, I want to throw a top water, especially a popper. And then I'll throw a hair jig a lot, secret fluke rig, a spy bait Ned rig, drop shot. Like that's kind of what I'll have. Maybe I'll have a Carolina rig in. Maybe I'll have a jerk bait. Maybe I'll have a crankbait. But these are kind of the bread and butter techniques that I'm going to use this time of year. So that one was caught during the National Sales Conference on Fence Lake on a big spook. I caught like 4 pretty big ones on a spook. And it was like, that happens like right now, this time of year is when they have that. So that was on a lake real close, and I caught a bunch of good ones up there in the top. But this is my favorite time of year to fish a popper. Like I love throwing a popper. If it's a big flat area, it's calm. I think it's pretty key for it to be pretty calm with the popper, especially for the way I like to fish it. I'm fishing it real slow. And I generally will throw an original Rebel popper. That's the one I like the best. I think it's a P65, just the normal size. Long cast, let it hit the water, let the ring settle out, pop it one time, let the ring settle out. It's painfully slow, but I honestly think that gets you some of the biggest bites this time of year, whether it's one of those fish garden fry, one of those fish hanging around the beds, just cruising a flat. There's something about a popper in smallmouth this time of year. And that's not only just glacial lakes. It's really good on the other flowages too, but that's going to be my first pick when I go out and start. I throw it. I've gone back and forth on this because there's a lot of different theories with line, rod for top water. So I went back to a 7-foot medium, fast, St. Croix Legend X or Legend Elite, and I'm throwing 15-pound mono. It's literally the only thing I throw mono for is a power. And I used to throw it on braid with a leader, with a mono leader. And I just go back and forth, but I've kind of settled on that setup for just landing them. I don't know. I feel confident with it. My other top water, like my spook, I throw on braid with a floral leader. I'll talk about that later. So that's what I like to throw that on. Now, the other top water I throw a lot is just a big walking bait. And I'm talking a big one. Like I don't throw a little, I brought it. This is the one if I had one to throw largemouth, smallmouth on Lake Forest, on any of the lakes around here, it's the Bow and Silver super spook, 3-hook super spook. I don't throw the little one at all. I like this one. I double split ring it. I got a this setup right here is for this bait. It's a 7.4 medium heavy moderate glass rod, 30-pound Sunline SX1 braid, and a 20-pound Sunline fluorocarbon leader, which throws a lot of people off. You can't, like with a popper, you can't throw a fluorocarbon leader if you're throwing braid because it's just too small to pull it down. But with this, I want this as opposed to the straight braid, so my line doesn't get followed up in the hooks. And with the fluorocarbon, it pulls the front of the bait down and I can work it faster. That's what I throw it on. And I have a lot of confidence in it. Like I said, largemouth, smallmouth spots. This rod is always in the boat. It's always in the boat, ready to go. So in this situation we're talking about is the other top water that I'll throw. If there's a little bit of a chop on the water, or if there's a lot of chop on the water, if I really want to cover vast areas quick, I could cast this a long ways and work it back. And I think a lot of times they'll boil on it or miss it, but it'll tell you where they're at. And there's just something about a big walking bait that smallmouth have to go investigate. Like I said, a lot of times they'll come up, boil on it, pop it out of the water. Sometimes you'll get them, sometimes you won't. But if you find a couple areas where they're coming up and investigating it, then you'll slow down, throw your hair jig, throw your fluke, throw your Ned rig. But this is always in the boat this time of year. And this is probably my favorite time to throw a big walking bait too, is post spawn. So that's the setup for that. Once I get done with that, like I kind of like to work my way from the top of the water column all the way to the bottom. I like to start on the top first this time of year. Like I don't go out and start dragging right away this time of year. I would much rather fish moving bait. So from the top water, we're going to do either a hair jig or a spy bait. I didn't bring a spy bait. I did bring my hair jig set up because I think it's very dialed in. 16th or 8th ounce are my go-to sizes, and actually the one that I have made for me, I trim a little bit of lead off, so I'll have a 16th, a 32nd, and an 8th. That's the main sizes that I throw. Obviously, you'll vary how fast you want to fish it, how deep you are. That's where that'll come into play, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So this setup, when I first started throwing hair jigs, boy, the first time I went to sturgeon bait, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. You would read stuff. There was very little information about it. It had been kept really secret by guys coming down from Canada. Like they're kind of the ones that brought it to sturgeon bait. They would come down to sturgeon bait and they would just beat everybody. Nobody knew what they were doing. So there was really not a lot of information on it. But now it's kind of blown up. And I really feel like, and obviously I'm sponsored by St. Croix and all that, but I really feel like this is the best hair jig rod you can buy. It's the 7-foot, 10-inch, medium light, extra fast Legend Tournament. I think it's actually the hair jig rod. I used the 7.6 Elite before that, and that was good. But this has the perfect amount of tip to cast it a long ways, because that's a very, very, very key thing with a hair jig, is casting a long ways. I like a little bit bigger reel, 3,000 size, as light a braid as you can get away with. This is 8 pound. And then I'll do a 6 to 8 pound floral leader. And with this particular technique, I don't like to reel my knot up into the reel. I just feel like my FG knot between the floral and the braid. I just feel like when you're throwing something really light like this on a really whippy rod, it can have a tendency to get caught up in your reel. And I don't care what anybody says, how good an FG knot they tie. If you're casting your knot out of your reel, you're not going to be able to cast as far as if that knot is 6 inches in front of your reel. I'll argue that to my death. So that's why I'll run a little bit shorter leader on this. It'll still be 6 to 8 foot, but I'm not one of them guys that's going to have a 20-foot leader on. It's just I'll outcast you and catch more fish because of it. So that's the setup that I use. I'd say 95% of the time I'm throwing a straight black. The other 5% I'm throwing a black and brown. 4%. Probably 1% I'm throwing straight brown. And that's really when it's like, if it's a true mayfly hatch, sometimes I'll throw just straight brown. So I think they maybe bite a little better than a black and brown. That's my hair jig setup. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more on like the technique of the hair jig in a couple slides. And like some just little tricks that I've learned over the years. And I think a spy bait goes hand in hand with it. Like I'll have them both out. Some days they bite the spy bait better. Some days they bite the hair jig better. That one, once again, I messed around with rods a lot. I settled on a 7-foot, 3-inch medium light, Legend Extreme, same line, shorter leader, but real similar to the hair jig. I mean, you're just winding it around. So this is a hack most people know about cutting a small piece of stick bait and putting it on. How many people fish a hair jig? Does anybody fish a hair jig in here? So very few people just put a hair jig on anymore and just throw it. They'll cut a small piece of just a stick bait and put it on. But what I found, some people try to glue it on, which is a big no-no in my eyes with marabou. Like that's a good way to ruin a really nice marabou jig, is to soak up a bunch of super glue. So what I do is I go to any craft store and I buy earring backers. They're just a little I've never put an earring on myself, but it's for going on the backside of an earring to keep falling out. So you go there, buy a box of them. It's like $4 for a lifetime supply. And then what I do, you can kind of see on here, I'll put my stick bait on, and then you just put that earring backer on and push it up behind that stick bait. And then it won't go anywhere. Like a lot of times if you don't do that, even if you glue it, you'll start casting, it'll start sliding down, and then your hair's not puffing out like how you want it, and you're putting another one on. And marabou is not the easiest thing to work with when you're tying it on, or it's just not very forgiving. So that trick has saved me tons of time. And then you can also modify that stick bait. Like you can push that stopper in further to make it puff more. You can slide it out further to make it more slender. So that's just a little trick that I've done for a long time. And I use those earring backers for a lot of other things. I use them for like keeping trail hooks on spinner baits, chatter baits. For $5, you'll find yourself using them a lot. The other little hack is using Elastec for your little stick bait. So the reason I would do that is because I want it to be more buoyant. So a lot of times I'll throw a little heavier hair jig, but I want it to perform like a 16th ounce. So I'll put a piece of TRD on there. That's Elastec that floats. So I still get the weight of casting it, but I'm still going to be able to fish it super high in the water column. And you can just cut different size chunks and find, I mean, if you want to reel it right below the surface, you can cut like a 3/4 inch chunk and your hair jig will literally go right under the water. So once again, that's something I haven't heard of a lot of people doing that. I mean, most people just find a Senko on the bottom of the boat, cut a piece off, put it on there. And I do that. You know, if I'm fishing out in 7 to 10 foot and I want to get it down within 2 feet of the bottom, then that's what I put on there. But if I'm fishing a 3 foot flat and I want to keep it within a foot of the surface, I'll put an Elastec. Same system, same with the stopper and everything. So that's just a couple little hacks. Oh my God, we don't have a lot of time. Boat positioning. I'll just talk about this real quick. With a hair jig. So this is something I see a lot of people that I fish against doing wrong. Once again, this is all my opinion. You know, a lot of people will try to cast into the wind. They get a big bow in their line. They're losing fish. They're missing fish. I'll always, you know, if this is the flat I'm fishing, the wind's blowing this way, I'm going to spot lock. And once again, I'm thinking tournament scenario with me and a partner. I'll spot lock on the upwind side. We'll both stand on the back of the boat. And being guy fishing with is left-handed, I'm right-handed, so it works out perfect. Like we'll just make it long, the casting you can make, wind right at our back, and your bait tracks so much better when you do that versus a bow in your line or fighting trying to cast that thing into the wind. Now, if it's calm, obviously it doesn't matter. Still do whatever you want. But if there's wind, which is personally, I want some wind when I'm throwing a hair jig. I want it at my back. I'm going to utilize the spot lock on my Minn Kota, and I'm going to fan cast this for a while, slide over 20 feet, fan cast this, and just do that the whole front side of that pump or flat, whatever I'm fishing. It's just so many times I'll be out fishing and I'll see these guys. You can just hear it, you know, they're trying to cast and it goes like 20 feet, and then they got a bow in their line, and you're not going to catch near as many fish. Secret fluke rig. How many people have seen a fluke rig like this? It originally started with a pop rivet. So you'd take a pop rivet, you'd shove it into the nose of the bait, tie a treble hook on. Zona was the first person I saw do this. It originated, like I said, with a pop rivet. And then basically that slides on your line. The reason I stopped using a pop rivet is it just would mar your line up. Like it just tore it up. So then I started experimenting with like different straws. And the one you need is like the coffee stir straws from Quick Trip. Just kind of grab a couple extra for your coffee. So I did like 5 years ago, and I mean, I've got the same like 4 straws forever. And then you'll just push that straw in the nose of your fluke. And once again, I'm sponsored by Big Bite. There's 2 of them you need to do this with, 2 flukes. You can do it with any of them, but the 2 you need to do it with is a caffeine shad from Strike King or the original jerk minnow from Big Bite. Those are the best 2. You can catch them on any other ones, but those are the best two because they're heavier. So you thread that through, and it can be tricky. It takes a few times because you want to get it as straight as you can, and then you got to kind of pull the little plastic out of the middle, thread your line through. Number two treble hook, and partially, I mean, you could put a number 4 on there, but I want the number 2 because I want it to be heavier. And this is like this time of year, this can be just magical. They will not bite anything else. They will bite this. For me personally, I think it's about a 2-week period where it's really, really crazy. Like you can go on some of these flats and see fish, and I'm thinking back to a couple scenarios in tournaments where like you literally couldn't catch them on anything else, and you throw this thing out and you catch them. And the reason I like rigging it like this versus a EWG hook or a belly weighted hook is you hook like 99%. Like it's just really good. So if you haven't tried that, it works really good with that little straw. I like to throw it on a 610 medium, and I'll throw it 14 to 16 pound fluorocarbon leader. I want a little heavier leader. I want it to be fluorocarbon, once again, to keep that bait down. I don't think the 16 pound makes them bite any less. And then you're just, you're working it across the top like a fluke. It's so fun because they'll come up and boil on it. And once again, I know a lot of people don't do it around here. They do it like in New York, it's a big thing. Everybody will have that on out there, but around here, and that's the color. It's the only color. This is Siren. The big bite one is called I think it's chartreuse pearl. They call it. It's like a swirl. I've caught them on white too, but that chartreuse one, for whatever reason, they like to snack on it. You want me to end right at noon? Okay, I just got a lot of other stuff on here. Ned rig tube jig. You honestly kind of my last. I like throwing them, but I would rather catch them on a hair jig. I would rather catch them on a fluke. I'd rather catch them on a top water. Kind of interchangeable, the two baits. The one thing I will tell you is I have become really fond of the little tubes, 2.5 to 3 inch. That's what I throw the most. I don't throw a ton of. I shouldn't say that. This time of year, I don't throw a ton of the bigger tubes. I really like a little 2.5 to 3 inch tube, 1/4 ounce head. Say same type of thing with a Ned rig. I mean, they're interchangeable. Some days they like the tube better. Some days they like the Ned rig better. Throw them both on the same rod, 7.3 medium extra fast, Legend Tournament, 12 pound braid, 8 to 10 pound leader. Drop shot. I love throwing a drop shot. It's probably what I've caught more smallmouth on than anything in my life. But this time of year, once again, I don't throw it as much as I do other times of the year. And this stuff I'm throwing, like a drop shot, is where I'll start throwing that more when I get out onto the deeper sections. If I get out on the end of a long point, I get out on some of them humps close to the flats, more in that 15 to 20 foot of water. And I find some of them isolated boulders, some of them sand patches. That's where I'll throw the drop shot. So I wouldn't say it's my last pick, but it's just, I don't throw it as much this time of year. The one little tip with that is I throw a lot longer a lot longer leader than a lot of people. A lot of people are running a 8 to 10 inch leader. I'll run an 18 to 24 inch leader. I just want it up off the bottom higher, especially if I'm casting it, because you got to think about when you're casting that drop shot, the longer cast you make, the closer the bait's going to be to the bottom because of the angle of your line. So if you're making long casts, for sure tie a lot longer leader. Now, if you're dropping it vertical and you have a 12-inch leader, your bait's going to be 12 inches off the bottom. If you have a 12-inch leader and you're casting it 75 feet, it's going to be about an inch off the bottom because of the angle. So 610 medium light extra fast. I don't think I brought that rod in. Either the physics or I throw the tournament a lot too. That's kind of my go-to drop shot setup. I do like a bright I use the Sunline AMZ. It's an orange braid. I do like that for drop shot. Anytime I'm winding something like a hair jig, a spy bait, you know, a little 2.8 inch swim bait, whenever I'm winding something where I'm potentially going to be winding it over or through fish, I don't like bright line myself. I know a lot of guys do it. They say it doesn't matter, but if you look at a lot of my setups, you know, most of my bottom stuff will be like an orange. But if I'm winding through stuff, I want green. I just, in my mind, I can't see how they can't see. Maybe they can. I don't know. But in my mind, it messes with me. So if I'm winding something through them, I want green line, something they can't see as well. I think that's kind of it. These are just the key points. Smallmouth stay around a lot longer than most people think in spawning areas. Flats, big, long tapering points, humps adjacent to spawning areas are the highest percentage. Cover the entire water column. Don't go out and just do your favorite thing and drag your tube around. Cover the whole water column. Position the boat properly. And rock, gravel, sand, cabbage, combinations. That's going to be generally your key areas. So that's kind of what I got. A lot quicker than I intended on going through it. But any questions? Not a single question. Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like, there's still always fish shallow. I mean, especially like the lakes we fish. Like, you can throw a hair jig all year. It's just, it really shines in like your pre-spawn spawn right now is when it's the best, I think. But yeah, if you find fish up, like if you're catching fish on top water in the morning in August on a hump or shallow flat, as soon as they stop biting that, throw a hair jig. Or the little, you know, like the little swim bait's the other thing that kind of fits into that mold. So
I've been told that you're more of a traditional fisherman, and
that I am.
That you don't rely on forward-facing sonar 360 as much.
That's false. That's false. No, I mean, I like to catch fish how I got to catch them. I mean, that's my job to do that, and it was also my job before I did this full-time fishing. I sold products at Shields for over 20 years. So the evolution of technology is here. Like I love going out and, you know, fishing live scope, whatever, chasing bait. I love doing that. But the difference with me versus some of the other people is that's all they rely on. Like I'm not scared to like the Sabine. I mean, I caught him on a buzzbait and flipping. I think I had it on, but I never looked at it. Like doing what I do, you have to do everything. So, but I wouldn't say I'm a traditional fisher. I mean, I am, but I love technology. Like if you put a computer in front of me, I probably couldn't figure out how to turn it on and do anything with it. But if you put a locator graph in front of me, a Humminbird Apex, I can probably solve a lot of the world's problems on it because I spend a lot of time with it, and I love it. I love getting any piece of information I can get or learn more about fish, not just bass, but everything, just their behavior. I love all the technology. I mean, I think there's some issues we could run into with it, and I think that it's changing some things potentially, but I'm not against it. I mean, if I was against it, I wouldn't be on the Elite Series for more than 2 seasons. It's just, and I was like that before I was on the Elite Series. I was one of the first ones to get side imaging, one of the first ones to get 360. I shouldn't say that. I was one of the first ones to get those technologies and actually learn what they can do and use it to my ability to where I could capitalize on it. It's the same thing with live scope. I actually got on that a little bit late, like a year or two late, but it's a tool. There's times it helps, there's times it hurts. So that's my opinion on that.
What's your best knot bait on?
My bait's on? Good question. I tie a Miller knot. No, probably nobody's ever heard of that. I had with fluorocarbon, I tie a Miller knot. Braid, I'll still tie a Palomar or a double Palomar, but I've grown really fond of the Miller knot. You should look it up. It's a really good fluoro knot, and I feel like it's more reliable than a Palomar because The problem with a Palomar, if you get into lighter pound tests, especially with fluorocarbon, if you tie it wrong, you're done. Like you're going to break it. Where a Miller knot, when you get done doing it, you got a nice little figure 8. Like, you know, if you tied it incorrectly. And there's no pressure on the knot until you cinch the very end of it. That's the other thing. So I started doing that about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's about the only knot I tied. You, like I said, no one's probably ever heard of it. And I never heard of it until a friend of mine told me about it. And that's all I tied. There's some good videos online. It's really easy to tie, but it's been really, really good for me. Anything else?
Yeah. Can we get a picture?
Yeah, for sure. Nope. Surprised it didn't melt in here. All right, well, thanks, guys. I know it was a little fast, but hopefully you got a little bit of info out of that babble.